Your tomatoes may still be standing, but the flowers have stopped turning into fruit. Your cucumbers may look healthy at sunrise and collapse before lunch. Your zucchini may keep opening blossoms that never become a harvest. Then, only a few feet away, okra is pushing out new pods, cowpeas are climbing, and Malabar spinach is covering its trellis under the same blazing July sun. That contrast is not luck. It comes from choosing crops that are built for heat, protecting their roots, watering deeply instead of constantly, and harvesting at the right stage. In this video, we are going through 16 vegetables that can keep giving you leaves, pods, and fruit when much of the summer garden slows down. Near the end, we will also separate the truly heat-loving crops from the familiar vegetables that only perform well when you choose the right variety and give them extra protection. Before we begin the list, it helps to understand why a plant can be alive and still stop producing. Survival and production are not the same thing. A tomato can hold green leaves for weeks while shedding flowers. A cucumber can recover every evening but fail to enlarge its fruit. A pepper can remain compact and healthy looking while putting nearly all of its energy into protecting itself. During a heat wave, several stresses arrive at once. The leaves lose water faster, pollen may become less effective. Flowers may dry or drop before fruit begins to form. In containers, the roots also receive heat from the sides of the pot. A black plastic pot sitting in direct afternoon sun can become a much harsher environment than the air temperature suggests. This is why watering more often does not always solve the problem. A quick splash may wet only the top inch while the lower root ball remains dry. At the other extreme, repeated watering into already wet soil can push oxygen out of the root zone. The plant then wilts because the roots are stressed, not because there is no water around them. The better test is to check moisture several inches below the surface. Water slowly until the entire root ball is wet and excess water drains from the bottom. Then allow the surface to begin drying before watering again. In a small fabric grow bag, that may mean daily attention during extreme heat. In a large mulched container, the interval may be longer. The calendar matters less than what the root zone is actually doing. Heat tolerance also does not mean drought tolerance. Okra, eggplant, cowpeas, and hot peppers may handle hot air better than lettuce or standard spinach, but they still produce best when moisture remains reasonably steady. A plant that swings from bone dry to soaking wet may survive, yet its flowers and young fruit often pay the price. Fertilizer is another common trap. When a plant is limp from heat, a strong feeding does not cool the roots or restore water balance. Concentrated fertilizer can add more stress. First, stabilize moisture, add shade only where it is needed, and wait for the plant to recover. Feeding should support active growth, not force a distressed plant to perform. July, therefore, requires a different strategy from spring. Instead of asking every crop to tolerate the same conditions, we choose plants whose natural growth cycle matches summer. We keep their roots cooler than the surrounding air, and we harvest often enough to encourage continued production. The first 4 vegetables reveal something important. Some crops do not merely tolerate summer heat. Their strongest growth begins when spring vegetables start slowing down. The first crop is okra, one of the most dependable choices for a hot summer garden. Once established, okra usually responds to long days in warm soil with rapid vertical growth and a steady sequence of flowers. In the ground, it can become a tall backbone for the garden. In containers, give one plant at least a 5-gallon pot, and use a larger container when possible so the root zone does not dry out before the afternoon is over. Choose a compact variety when height is limited, or a standard variety such as Clemson spineless when you have room. Burgundy types can add color, but the main rule is the same for all of them. Harvest the pods while they are still tender. In intense heat, a pod that seemed small yesterday can become large and fibrous very quickly. Check the plant every day or two, and cut pods cleanly instead of pulling and damaging the stem. Frequent picking is not only about tenderness. When old pods remain and begin developing mature seed, the plant has less reason to keep producing new flowers. Removing usable pods on time helps keep the harvest moving. Wear sleeves if the leaves irritate your skin, and look beneath the foliage for aphids, whiteflies, and other sap-feeding insects. A strong stream of water early in the day can remove a light infestation, while severe problems require closer management. Okra likes full sun, but a container exposed to reflected heat from concrete or a south-facing wall may still need protection around the pot. Shade the container rather than placing the entire plant in deep shade. A layer of 2 to 3 inches of clean straw, shredded leaves, or another suitable mulch can reduce moisture loss, but keep the mulch a little away from the stem. If you want the simplest first choice on this list, okra is difficult to beat. The second crop is eggplant. Eggplant often looks far more comfortable in July than many large fruited tomatoes, especially when you choose a variety that matures efficiently and fits the space. Slender Asian types such as Ichiban or Pingtung Long are useful in containers because the fruits develop without forcing the plant to carry several extremely heavy globes at once. Compact globe varieties can also perform well, but they need enough soil volume to prevent constant moisture swings. A 5-gallon container is the minimum practical starting point for one eggplant. 7 to 10 gallons gives the roots a better buffer against heat and allows the plant to grow with fewer interruptions. Use a mix that drains freely but still holds moisture. If water rushes straight down a gap between the soil and the pot wall, the root ball may remain dry even though water exits the bottom. Re-wet very dry potting mix slowly in several passes. Harvest eggplant when the skin is still glossy and the flesh feels firm. A dull surface and hardening seeds usually mean the fruit has remained too long. Waiting for the largest possible fruit can slow the next set of blossoms, so harvest for quality rather than maximum size. Cut the stem with pruners because many varieties have small spines around the calyx. Watch for flea beetles, which leave many tiny holes in the leaves, and for spider mites during dry heat. Spider mites often begin on the undersides of leaves, where fine stippling appears before the entire plant looks faded. Avoid stripping too many leaves from the plant. The canopy protects developing fruit from sun scald and helps shade the root area. Feed lightly and consistently after active growth resumes. Too much nitrogen can produce impressive foliage with disappointing fruit. The third crop is hot pepper. Jalapeno, serrano, cayenne, Thai-type peppers, and many other hot peppers generally cope with summer heat better than large bell peppers. They are not immune to flower drop, especially when hot nights prevent the plant from recovering. But a healthy plant can pause and then begin setting fruit again as conditions moderate. Most compact pepper plants can grow in a 3 to 5 gallon container, though a larger pot makes watering easier. The mix should drain well, and the pot must have open drainage holes. Keep moisture steady rather than allowing the leaves to wilt hard every day. A pepper that repeatedly dries to the point of collapse may stay alive but lose flowers and develop smaller fruit. You can harvest many hot peppers while they are green or leave some to ripen to their mature color. Picking green fruit gives the plant less time to support each pepper and can encourage additional production. Allowing fruit to color produces a different flavor and often more heat, but it also keeps the fruit on the plant longer. A practical compromise is to harvest part of the crop green and allow selected peppers to ripen fully. Do not overprune peppers during a heat wave. Removing a large portion of the canopy suddenly exposes fruit to intense sun, increasing the risk of pale, damaged areas. If branches are overloaded, use a small stake or cage rather than cutting away protective foliage. When a pepper wilts in the afternoon, check the soil before watering. Temporary midday droop can occur even when moisture is adequate, while a plant that remains limp after sunset needs immediate attention. The fourth crop is sweet potato, and it changes the way we think about a summer harvest. Most gardeners grow it for the roots that develop later in the season, but the tender leaves and young shoot tips are also edible when properly prepared. That means a healthy planting can offer a modest leafy harvest during summer while the underground crop continues developing. Sweet potatoes need warmth, room, and a long enough season. In a container, use a wide grow bag or a pot of at least 10 gallons for a small planting, with larger containers giving the roots more space. Do not pack the mix heavily. Loose, well-drained soil helps prevent waterlogging and allows storage roots to expand. Plant slips after the soil is warm, and give the vines time to establish before taking any leaves. When harvesting greens, remove only a small portion of the youngest tips at one time. Do not repeatedly strip the vines, because the plant needs a broad leaf canopy to capture energy for root development. Think of the leaves as a secondary harvest, not the main crop. Cutting a few growing tips can also help manage vines that are spilling across a walkway, but severe pruning can reduce the final root harvest. Sweet potato vines tolerate heat well, yet the container still cannot be ignored. A small grow bag may dry rapidly, and constantly saturated soil can cause a different set of problems. Water deeply, then allow excess water to drain. If the vines spread over the soil surface, they provide some natural shading, but mulch can still help during the hottest period. These first four crops give you several different roles. Okra is the straightforward high heat producer. Eggplant offers repeated fruit from a compact framework. Hot peppers fit smaller containers and allow flexible harvest stages. Sweet potato uses horizontal space and can provide both limited greens in summer and roots later. All four occupy the center of a pot or bed, but the next group turns fences, railings, and trellises into productive growing space. The fifth crop is cowpea, also called southern pea, black-eyed pea, or field pea, depending on the type. Cowpeas are deeply associated with hot weather growing because they establish and flower in conditions that cause many common beans to struggle. Some varieties grow as compact bushes, while others send out longer runners, so read the seed description before deciding how much support and space to provide. Cowpeas can be harvested in more than one way. Young pods can be picked before the seeds enlarge, although many gardeners allow the peas to develop and shell them fresh or dry them for storage. Decide which harvest you want because the timing is very different. For tender pods, check the plants often. For shelling peas, wait until the pods are full but not yet completely dry. For dry peas, leave healthy pods until they become papery, then finish drying them in a protected place if humid weather threatens mold. Even a crop known for heat tolerance needs water during flowering and pod development. Drought at that stage can reduce the number and size of peas. Water at the soil level to keep the leaves dry, especially in humid climates. Do not keep the root zone constantly soggy. Cowpeas are often more forgiving than common snap beans, but poorly drained soil can still weaken them. In containers, bush cowpeas are easier to manage. Use a pot at least 12 inches deep and wide enough to prevent crowding. Several plants can share a broad container when spacing remains open enough for air to move through the foliage. A light support helps keep branches off wet soil. If aphids gather on tender tips, remove them early before they spread across the planting. The sixth crop is yardlong bean. Despite the name, the pods are usually best harvested well before they reach their maximum length. Yardlong beans are related to cowpeas and often continue flowering in weather that slows ordinary pole beans. They are one of the best choices for a hot fence, balcony trellis, or narrow garden where vertical space is more available than ground space. Give the vines a strong support before they begin climbing. A 6 to 8 foot trellis is useful because healthy vines can reach the top quickly. In a container, use at least a 5-gallon pot for a small planting, and choose a larger container when several vines share the same support. The structure must be anchored securely. Mature vines, leaves, and wet pods become surprisingly heavy during storms. Harvest the pods when they are smooth, flexible, and before the seeds form large bulges. Depending on temperature and variety, that can mean checking every day or two. Use scissors if pulling risks tearing the vine. Pods left too long become tougher, and mature seed production can slow the formation of new flowers. Regular harvesting is therefore part of the growing method, not merely the final reward. Steady moisture produces straighter, more tender pods. Long dry periods followed by heavy watering can lead to irregular growth. Mulch the container surface, but keep airflow around the base. Yardlong beans need sun to flower, so do not place heavy shade over the entire trellis unless the plants are being damaged during an exceptional heat event. Protect the root container first and preserve as much useful light as possible. The seventh crop is Armenian cucumber. It looks and tastes enough like a cucumber that it is usually eaten the same way, but botanically it is a type of melon. That difference helps explain why it often remains productive in hot summer conditions, where some standard slicing cucumbers become bitter, diseased, or exhausted. Armenian cucumber vines need room. Train them on a tall, sturdy trellis so air can move around the leaves and the fruits remain clean. One vigorous plant can occupy a large section of support. For container growing, provide at least 10 gallons of mix for one plant, with 15 gallons offering a more stable root zone. Small pots create constant watering pressure and may limit fruit development. Harvest the fruit while it is tender and before the skin becomes thick. Many gardeners prefer it between 12 and 18 inches long, but size varies with the cultivar. Use texture as your guide. The fruit should feel firm, not woody, and the seeds should still be soft. Leaving oversized fruit on the vine directs energy toward mature seed and can reduce new flowering. Like other members of the cucumber and melon family, Armenian cucumber relies on successful pollination. If flowers open but young fruit shrivels, the problem may be poor pollination rather than heat alone. Encourage pollinators by avoiding broad insecticide applications during bloom. In a small protected garden, hand pollination in the morning can help when pollinator activity is low. Water at the base and avoid wetting the leaves late in the day. In humid regions, keep the vine open and remove only badly damaged leaves. Do not strip healthy foliage, because it shades the fruit and powers continued growth. The next vine is equally comfortable in summer heat, but its flavor is far more distinctive. The eighth crop is bitter melon. This vigorous vine thrives in warm weather and can cover a trellis rapidly once established. Its deeply divided leaves create an attractive screen, while the green fruits are harvested before full ripeness. Bitter melon is valued in many cuisines, but the bitterness is real, so plant it because your household enjoys it, not merely because it grows well. Use a substantial trellis at least 6 feet tall and give the vine enough width to spread. A 10-gallon container is a practical minimum for one strong plant, while a larger pot reduces watering stress. Train young shoots early so the vine does not wrap around nearby crops. Once growth becomes dense, selective thinning can improve airflow, but avoid removing so much foliage that fruits become exposed to harsh sun. Harvest fruits while they are green and firm, before they soften, turn yellow or orange, and split open. Mature fruits reveal bright seed coverings, but the eating quality has changed by that stage. Wear gloves if the vine irritates your skin, and use clean pruners to avoid tearing stems. Frequent harvest encourages the plant to continue flowering. Bitter melon can face fruit flies, aphids, whiteflies, and fungal issues, especially in humid climates. Inspect developing fruits and the undersides of leaves. Remove damaged fruit rather than allowing it to rot within the canopy. Water the root zone in the morning, maintain airflow, and keep fallen leaves from accumulating around the base. The ninth crop is edible loofah. Most people know loofah as the mature, fibrous sponge, but the young fruit of suitable edible varieties can be cooked as a vegetable. The critical word is young. Once the internal fibers begin developing, the texture changes rapidly, and a fruit that looked usable a few days earlier may already be too tough. Loofah is not a small vine. It needs a strong, tall trellis and a long, warm season. A 15-gallon container is a more realistic starting point than a small patio pot, and growing in the ground is easier where space is available. Place the support before planting because installing it later can damage roots and tangled vines. Keep loofah away from weak railings or lightweight structures that cannot hold a mature canopy. Harvest edible fruits according to the variety, generally while they are still slim, tender, and easily marked by a fingernail. Do not depend on one universal length because different loofah types develop fibers at different stages. When in doubt, harvest a little earlier. Cut one fruit, inspect the interior, and use that result to refine the timing for the rest of the crop. Pollination matters here as well. The vine produces separate male and female flowers, and young fruits will not continue developing without successful pollination. Insect activity is especially important during the morning. If flowers are abundant but fruits repeatedly yellow and drop, inspect for poor pollination, moisture stress, and pest damage before adding fertilizer. Because loofah grows so vigorously, it can shade every smaller plant nearby. Guide the main vines, remove only excess side growth when necessary, and position sun-loving crops on the brighter side of the trellis. Keep the soil consistently moist but not waterlogged. Large leaves can lose considerable water on a hot, windy day, and a small root volume will not support the canopy for long. Cowpea, yardlong bean, Armenian cucumber, bitter melon, and edible loofah all convert vertical space into food, but they do not have identical needs. Cowpeas are the simplest and most flexible. Yardlong beans reward frequent picking. Armenian cucumber offers a familiar fresh flavor. Bitter melon is productive for people who enjoy its distinctive taste. Loofah is the most demanding in space and timing, but also the most surprising. At this point, it may seem that choosing a heat-loving crop solves the problem. But this is exactly where many July gardens still fail, because the plant above the soil can tolerate hot air, while the roots inside the container cannot tolerate a dry, overheated root ball every afternoon. The first correction is to water deeply in the morning. Morning watering gives the plant time to absorb moisture before the strongest heat arrives, while leaves and surfaces can dry before night. Apply water slowly. If it immediately runs down the side of the pot, pause and return several minutes later so a dry mix can rehydrate instead of repelling the water. Check moisture below the surface with a finger, a wooden skewer, or a small hand trowel. The top inch can appear dry while the lower root zone is still wet, and the reverse can occur when a crusted surface hides dry material underneath. Water according to the root ball, not merely according to the appearance of the leaves. Temporary afternoon wilt is not always an emergency. On a very hot day, a plant may lose water through its leaves faster than the roots can replace it, even when the soil contains moisture. If the plant recovers after the sun weakens, observe it before adding more water. If it remains wilted into the evening or is still limp at dawn, investigate immediately for dry soil, damaged roots, blocked drainage, or disease. Mulch is the second layer of protection. Add roughly 2 to 3 inches of clean straw, shredded leaves, fine bark, or another mulch appropriate for containers. Leave a small open ring around the stem to reduce constant moisture against the crown. Mulch slows evaporation and limits rapid temperature swings, but it cannot repair a container that has no drainage or a root ball that has become completely compacted. Protect the side of the pot as well. A dark container can receive hours of direct sun even when the leaves appear comfortable. Group pots so they shade one another. Place the growing container inside a slightly larger, light-colored outer pot. Wrap the sunny side with a breathable light material, or position a low barrier that blocks afternoon sun from the container without shading the entire plant. Shade cloth is useful when applied with a clear purpose. During an exceptional heat wave, 30 to 40% shade over the afternoon side can reduce stress for many vegetables. It should not become permanent deep shade for crops that need strong light to flower. Newly transplanted seedlings may need temporary protection, while an established okra plant may need only its container shaded. Observe the plant and remove extra shade when the emergency passes. Do not respond to every heat problem with fertilizer. If the root ball is dry or overheated, strong feeding can increase salt stress. Restore moisture gradually, protect the roots, and wait until the plant is actively growing again. Then use a balanced feed at the label rate rather than doubling the amount in an attempt to replace lost time. Climate changes the details. In dry heat, reduce evaporation, block reflected sun, and pay close attention to fabric bags that dry from every side. In humid heat, avoid crowding, keep drainage open, and water early enough for foliage to dry. Dense, wet growth invites fungal problems and can hide pests. Inspect the undersides of leaves at least twice a week. Spider mites leave pale stippling and fine webbing. Whiteflies lift in a cloud when foliage is disturbed. Aphids cluster on tender growth. Catching them early is far easier than treating an infestation after the plant has already been weakened by heat. Once the roots are protected, the next 4 crops can supply the leafy harvest that lettuce and ordinary spinach usually cannot provide in July. A summer garden does not have to depend entirely on fruiting crops. It simply needs different leaves. The 10th crop is amaranth. Unlike lettuce, which often becomes bitter and sends up a flower stalk in heat, edible amaranth grows quickly through warm weather. Choose a variety sold for edible leaves and confirm the seed source rather than assuming every ornamental amaranth should be used the same way. Amaranth can grow in a garden bed or a container at least 12 inches deep. A broad pot allows several plants to be grown for repeated cutting. Harvest young leaves individually or pinch the tender top several inches above a leaf joint. That cut encourages side branches and creates another round of young growth. Do not wait until every leaf is large. Older leaves can become firmer, especially when the plant is dry. Frequent light harvesting usually gives better texture than one severe cutting. If a plant begins towering over neighboring containers, prune the top in stages rather than removing most of the canopy at once. Amaranth tolerates heat, but tender leaves still depend on water. A plant kept continuously dry may survive while producing smaller, tougher leaves. Water deeply and mulch the root zone. If flea beetles or caterpillars begin making holes, inspect early and remove damaged foliage before the problem spreads. The 11th crop is Malabar spinach. Despite its common name, it is not true spinach. It is a tropical vine with thick, succulent leaves and tender, growing tips. Standard spinach usually struggles in summer because long days and heat trigger bolting. Malabar spinach does the opposite. It becomes vigorous as the weather warms. Provide a trellis 4 to 6 feet tall and a container of at least 5 gallons for one plant, with more soil volume making care easier. Train the young vines toward the support. Once they reach the top, pinch the tips to encourage branching and keep the harvest within reach. Harvest young leaves and the last few inches of tender shoots. The texture is thicker and more mucilaginous than ordinary spinach, especially when cooked, so describe it honestly to anyone eating it for the first time. It works well in soups, stir-fries, and dishes where that texture is welcome. Malabar spinach often enjoys humid heat, but a dense wall of leaves can trap moisture. Space the vines, remove yellow or diseased leaves, and maintain airflow. Do not let the container sit in standing water. Regular picking controls the vine and provides the new tips that are usually the best part to eat. The 12th crop is New Zealand spinach. This is another plant that is used like spinach without being true spinach. Instead of climbing, it forms a spreading mound. That lower growth habit makes it useful where a tall trellis would shade other containers. Give it a broad pot or the edge of a raised bed where stems can spread. Begin harvesting only after the plant is established. Pinch the growing tips and young leaves, leaving enough foliage for continued growth. Regular tip harvest encourages branching, while removing nearly all the leaves can stall the plant. New Zealand spinach handles warm weather well, but the best leaf quality comes from even moisture. If the soil repeatedly dries hard, new growth becomes smaller. Water at the base and keep the leaves clean. Because the plant spreads, position it where stems will not block a path or smother smaller seedlings. The 13th crop is purslane. Many gardeners know it as a volunteer plant that appears in disturbed soil, but cultivated edible purslane can be grown intentionally for its crisp leaves and tender stems. Correct identification matters. Use seed or plants from a reliable edible source and never harvest from places that may have been sprayed or contaminated. Purslane stays low and fits into small sunny spaces. A shallow but wide container can work because the plant spreads across the surface. It tolerates dry conditions better than many leafy vegetables, yet drought, survival, and eating quality are different goals. For plump, tender stems, water when the upper soil begins to dry rather than waiting for prolonged wilting. Cut young stems several inches above the base so the plant can branch again. Keep flowers from scattering seed if you do not want it spreading into nearby pots. Purslane can also occupy an open edge around a taller crop, but do not crowd the main plant or make watering difficult. These 4 greens fill different roles. Malabar spinach climbs, New Zealand spinach spreads, purslane stays low. Amaranth grows upright and responds well to repeated tip harvest. None tastes exactly like ordinary spinach, and that is the point. July success often comes from replacing a cool season crop with a plant that naturally belongs in summer. Now we come to the 3 vegetables most likely to create disappointment. Seeing the words heat-tolerant on a seed packet does not mean the plant will behave like okra during an extreme heat wave. The 14th crop is a heat-set tomato. This category requires the most careful explanation in the entire list. A tomato described as heat-tolerant has been selected to set fruit more reliably in warm conditions than many standard varieties. It has not become immune to extreme heat. When both daytime and nighttime temperatures remain very high, pollen quality and flower retention can still decline. Look for varieties promoted for hot regions, such as Heatmaster, Solar Fire, Phoenix, or other locally recommended heat-set tomatoes. Local extension recommendations and experienced gardeners in your region are especially useful because dry desert heat and humid Gulf Coast heat create different problems. Choose healthy transplants and avoid moving them directly from protected conditions into harsh afternoon sun. For a determinate plant, use at least a 5-gallon container with 7 to 10 gallons giving a better moisture reserve. Large indeterminate plants need more root volume and stronger support. Cover the soil with mulch. Protect a dark pot from afternoon sun and water deeply enough to reach the lower roots. Irregular moisture can lead to cracking and blossom end problems even when the plant survives. Do not remove large amounts of foliage during a heat wave. Leaves shade the fruit and help regulate the plant. Remove diseased growth and crowded lower leaves when necessary, but avoid turning a full canopy into exposed stems. A light afternoon shade can help during severe heat, provided the plant still receives enough useful light. If new flowers drop, do not immediately add high nitrogen fertilizer. Keep the plant stable and healthy so it can set another round when nights become more favorable. Cherry and smaller fruited tomatoes often give a steadier impression of production because each fruit requires less time and energy than a very large slicing tomato. The honest promise is not uninterrupted fruit in every heat wave. It is better resilience and a stronger chance of resuming production. The 15th crop is heat-tolerant zucchini. This is another qualified recommendation. Zucchini grows quickly in warm soil, but extreme heat, poor pollination, squash bugs, vine borers, and powdery mildew can all shorten its productive period. Choose a variety described for hot climates or disease resistance, and favor compact plants when container space is limited. One plant needs a large container, ideally 15 gallons or more, because the broad leaves and rapid fruit growth demand water. Give it full morning sun and good airflow. In very hot regions, filtered late afternoon shade may reduce stress, but deep shade will reduce flowering. Zucchini produces separate male and female flowers. A female flower has a tiny fruit behind it. If that fruit begins growing and then turns yellow or soft, poor pollination may be the cause. Hand pollination in the morning can help in a small garden. Move pollen from a freshly opened male flower to the center of a freshly opened female flower. Harvest zucchini while the skin is tender and the fruit is still small to medium. Large fruits consume more plant energy and may hide beneath leaves until they become oversized. Check every day during active growth. Cut fruit with a knife or pruners rather than twisting the stem. Inspect the base and the undersides of leaves for squash bugs and signs of vine borer damage. Sudden wilting despite moist soil may indicate stem injury rather than thirst. Watering more heavily will not repair a damaged stem. This is why zucchini belongs near the end of the list. It can produce in summer heat, but it demands more monitoring than okra or cowpeas. The 16th crop is tomatillo. Tomatillos generally appreciate warm summer conditions and can remain vigorous when large tomatoes are struggling. They grow into broad, branching plants and produce fruit inside papery husks. Their most important planting rule is pollination. One isolated plant often produces poorly. Grow at least 2 genetically distinct plants that flower at the same time. Give each plant a large container of 10 gallons or more, or place them in the ground with room to spread. Use a cage or several stakes early because loaded branches can lean outward and break. Keep the root zone evenly moist, especially while flowers and young fruit are developing. A tomatillo is usually ready when the fruit has filled the husk and the husk begins to split or turn papery. Fruit color depends on the variety. Pick regularly and remove fallen fruit. Like its tomato relatives, tomatillo can attract flea beetles, hornworms, aphids, and other pests, so inspect leaves before damage becomes severe. Tomatillo is more forgiving in heat than many large tomatoes, but it is not a desert plant that can be left dry in a small pot. 2 plants, adequate root volume, steady moisture, and strong support turn it from a disappointing ornamental-looking bush into a productive food crop. That completes all 16 choices. The list is long, but the decision becomes easier when you match the plant to your space and the kind of harvest you actually want. For an easy start, choose okra, cowpeas, or amaranth. For a trellis, choose yardlong beans, Malabar spinach, or Armenian cucumber. For greens, combine amaranth with one spreading green. Use eggplant, hot peppers, and tomatillos, where you can provide containers and water. Treat heat-set tomatoes and zucchini as managed crops. A productive summer garden is not built by forcing spring vegetables to tolerate July. It is built by matching each crop to the season, keeping the roots stable, and harvesting often enough to keep the plant moving forward. Choose 3 crops that fit your space, protect their roots before the heat wave, and your July garden can keep giving you food.